We can do it. Yes, we can. We can change things throughout the land, but we all must lend a hand. We can do it. Oh, yes, we can. Oh, your neighbor over there, a bit bewildered, but he cares. He just doesn't know what to do. Join together and then there'll be two. There are others all around, scattered throughout the town. Reach out and you will see your numbers swell to 3. We can do it. Yes, we can. We can change things throughout the land, but we all must lend a hand. We can do it. Oh, yes, we can. Now together.
Bishop Tutu, who played such a crucial role in the transformation of South Africa from apartheid to a democratic society, once said, "When the people decide they want to be free, there's no stopping them short of victory." And that's not, when people decide when they have weapons, they want to be free. It's when people make that decision and are ready to risk their lives, if need be, to change that system of oppression, of dictatorship, of governments that aren't listening to the people. Gene Sharp has written a book called Waging Nonviolence, 20th Century Experience, 21st Century Potential. And there's the film, A Force More Powerful, that, is available on DVD, that we need to hear these stories about powerful nonviolent movements. We should show that DVD in every church, every community group, Kiwanis Club, Lions Club, women's organization, and get inspired what ordinary people have done in other parts of the world. And to think about Rosa Parks, in Montgomery, Alabama, having the courage, as a lone individual to say, I'm not going to ride the segregated buses anymore. And that was the spark that encouraged the thousands of people in Montgomery, Alabama to begin that bus boycott, which was a critical beginning of the freedom movement that was mid-60s, but mid-50s, but which continued through the 50s into the 60s. So I think if like Tutu says, if we the people decide we're no longer willing to put up with a world which is going to destroy the potential for life in future planets, I mean future generations, if we won't put up with a government that is putting half of our tax dollars into wars and preparations for wars, while cutting basic human needs, if we've decided that we want government that really represents all the people, not just the rich and the corporations, and join together, not just work as isolated individuals, we can create that change. And that song that was the anthem of the freedom movement, We Shall Overcome, I think can really become true. So I hope that people, if you've been inspired by some of the stories that you've heard, will be inspired to take a look at my book, Waging Peace, Global Adventures of a Lifelong Activist, which is available from Amazon or from PM Press, the publisher, or from me if you want to get in touch with me. I'll give you an autographed copy for $20. I'm at 721 Schrader Street, San Francisco, California, 94117. So enjoy, and look forward to seeing you on the trail. And if you are involved in helping build nonviolent campaign or help be a part of a movement for justice and peace in the world, I'd love to hear from you. And I think the one final thing I'll say is I am nurtured and am inspired by the people I know all over the world that are engaging in nonviolent struggle for a more just, peaceful, environmentally sound world. And so I realize I'm not alone, and they're not alone. And that is what keeps me going, and I think hopefully that can be inspiring and supportive for you as well. The wars in Afghanistan and Iraq over the last 15 years, actually it's much more than that, if you look at the U.S. support for the Mujahideen during the Afghanistan war and our economic sanctions on Iraq, back much longer than that. But I think because of the American position on Israel-Palestine, really giving 100% support to Israel, ignoring the needs of the Palestinians, because of our military bases in the Middle East, which, these are sacred lands to the Muslim people. And the idea of American military bases is not, much appreciated. Anyway, it was American policies in the Middle East supporting dictatorships against their own people that brought on the 9/11 attacks. The Bush-Cheney decision to respond to the September 11th, 2001 attacks by attacking Afghanistan was a tragic mistake. There was goodwill by people all over the world, including Iran. People had candlelight vigils around the world supporting the American people who had this attack. But instead of using that sympathy to try to empathize with people in other parts of the world who were also suffering military attacks and aggression, we decided to military attack and invade and then occupy Afghanistan. Well, there were groups like Families for Peaceful Tomorrows, who were families of the people who were killed on September 11th, 2001, who said, instead of revenge and counter violence, we want to use this as an opportunity to reach out to the humanity in one another. And so began making connections with people in many other parts of the world who are also on the receiving end of these violent kind of attacks, and who, instead of wanting to to strengthen the violent attacks and counter attacks, said we need to reach out and work for reconciliation and peaceful resolution of these conflicts. The U.S. and Russia and China are playing a very dangerous game, or a number of very dangerous games. We all seem to be in the mindset, in the United States more so than anybody else, that military means are the way to resolve conflict or to achieve security. And so places like Ukraine, where there's been a coup d'etat against the elected government, which was supported by the United States, Ukraine has really been traditionally part of the Russian sphere of influence. I mean, it's right on the Russia's border. It was part of the Soviet Union. And And there's been a split within people in the Ukraine. Some people wanted to be more pro-West, some people wanted to be pro-Russian. But the United States decided to help put in a very much pro-Western, pro-NATO kind of government, which included some quite fascist elements. People who had actually fought with Hitler against the Soviet Union during the Second World War. And Russia is scared stiff of these people. And to have a country which might become part of NATO, and which has American troops stationed there, right up on their border, and with American troops also in the Baltic countries with our tanks and heavy equipment, and in Poland, which is right on Russia's border, and in Czechoslovakia. This is Michael Clare has written that this is very similar to before the First World War, where everyone kind of showed their military muscle to try to avert war. Well, that's what we're doing right now with American tanks and Soviet tanks right on the border in Ukraine and in the Baltic countries and all over Eastern Europe. And it's like a game of chicken. You know, which side is going to stand aside and let the other side have their way, or is it's going to become a massive military confrontation, which will not only be at the expense of all the people that live in the area, but perhaps all of us. I mean, there's enough nuclear weapons to kill almost everybody in the world. And we're playing that game with the hope that the other side is going to give in. And as happened in Vietnam, where we had proxies, we got the South Vietnamese to fight our war against the North Vietnamese, and the Soviets supported the North Vietnamese. So we're doing that in Ukraine. The Russians are supporting one side, the Americans are supporting the other, and we're both rattling our nuclear warheads, and we're nuclear ready with our missiles and our bombers, and it's a very, very dangerous game. Well, if we, again, the idea of putting ourselves in the other person's shoes, the way the Americans felt when the Soviets put missiles in Cuba to try to protect Cuba from another invasion by the United States. Well, that's exactly the way the Russians feel now about being surrounded right on their border with NATO and American troops, and a Ukrainian government that is, fighting and prepared for a war with Russia, and is fighting now in eastern Ukraine with the more pro-Russian elements of the Ukrainian people. So
go to China now. You mentioned
okay.
Russia and China,
Yeah.
And we're playing the same game of chicken with China.
And we're playing the same game of chicken with China. The U.S. Building military bases and making military alliances. Right now, there are military exercises with South Korean troops and American troops, with bombing planes, with nuclear weapons capable planes going right up to the border of North Korea. And our military planes are challenging the Chinese on some of these islands off the China coast. We're getting an American military presence in the Philippines again. The Philippines spent years, decades, getting rid of American troops, and now they're coming back in some of our old military bases there. We're building military bases in Australia. We're making military alliances with Vietnam. And from China's perspective, and they feel they have a right to having friendly neighbors around them, the way the United States, I think, feels. We'd like to have friendly neighbors around us. So this could so easily, this is the Jeju Island that I mentioned, where the people there realize that they could be, it's not only this military base is not only destroying their lives and livelihood and sense of community, they could become a focal point for nuclear war because of this new massive military base, which will have American destroyers and all kinds of battleships ready to go to war with China. So it's a very, very dangerous situation. And the hope is that the American people, especially as Americans, we have a special responsibility for our own government, step back from the brink and say what I tried to say earlier around shared security. The only real security is if it's security for the Chinese, for the North Koreans, for the South Koreans, for the Vietnamese, for the Philippines, for the Americans, and for the Russians, and for the Eastern Europeans. It's security for all of us. It's not security for one at the expense of the other. And this arms race, and the $1 trillion that the United States has said it wants to spend in the next couple decades on modernizing our nuclear weapons is the exact opposite of what is needed to rid the world of nuclear weapons. We're ready to go to war to make sure that Iran or any other country doesn't even think about developing nuclear weapons. But we have the right to modernize them and to get better missiles and to put nuclear warheads in space if we want to. It's an insane way of looking at the world, and it's playing with fire. What President Kennedy said to us, the way people tried to stay out of the First World War, or the nations tried to stay out of it, was arming to the teeth. And that's what we're doing again. And since 9/11, the U.S. has at least doubled our military budget. And that's not the way to get security. I led these groups to the Soviet Union back in the 60s when these were our ultimate enemy. And a lot of very interesting young students went with me. And this one young woman, we had these long conversations in the VW bus, traveling between cities. And she said, I'm an optimist because I can't afford to be a pessimist. And, if you become a pessimist and give up, it's hopeless. And you feel there's nothing you can do. And the government has you right where they want you. Have people that are not going to give any trouble. They can bomb countries. They can, construct military bases. They can drone, kill innocent people. And the people do nothing. So that's what we do when we become pessimists. And so that's always stayed with me. That was 1962. So there was a group in Kosovo that called themselves the post-pessimists. And they were made up of both people of Serbian nationality and Albanian nationality who got together and thought, the pessimism is not doing us any good. So we can become post-pessimists. Martin Luther King said, among the amazing, powerful things he said throughout his life, he said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but bends toward justice. And he believed that, and I believe that, and I think that's part of what we need to do. Things are not hopeless. People have brought about amazing changes that nobody would have thought was possible, like ending slavery, ending women's as second-class citizens and not able to vote, et cetera. So we can create change today. We can challenge segregation, the we can challenge the money ruling our political leaders. I mean, there's movements right now to challenge that. We can challenge our national priorities that are putting profits and military machinery before human needs and the education of our children. And I firmly believe that the massive majority of people in the United States and of the whole world want peace. You know, nobody except the arms manufacturers benefit from war. And if we can realize we're not just a tiny minority, but that we're the massive majority of the world's people, and we have learned the power of nonviolence and non-cooperating with illegitimate authority, as people of the world have learned and are learning, we've got the power to create change. As I mentioned earlier, I think hope is a very important ingredient if we're to continue the struggle. So what are reasons for hope? One is transformations such as I mentioned in Berlin. We were able to go from the place of Soviet and American tanks facing each other, ready to start a nuclear war, to a great big picture of Gandhi and Walesa with a museum on the history of nonviolent struggle, half a block away. I mean, that's who would have believed that conversion could happen? There was a germ warfare plant in Frederick, Maryland, about 40 miles north of Washington, D.C., called Fort Detrick. And back in the 50s and 60s, they were making germ warfare, including something called Q fever. 2 ounces of this could kill everybody in the world if it was distributed evenly. And Quakers began a silent vigil at the entrance to this base. And my mother, who was a school teacher, went in her summer vacations up to be a part of this vigil. And the workers had orders not to accept any leaflets, not to look at these people standing along the road, and to just look straight ahead and drive into the base. And people stuck it out there in the scorching heat in the summer and the freezing cold in the winter, 10 hours a day. And my folks, about 10 years later, moved to Salem, Oregon. And my mom was in a bookstore one day, just looking at some books. And this guy came up to her and he says, "Were you in that vigil at Fort Detrick 10 years ago?" And she said, "Yeah, I was there." She was surprised. And this guy said, "I want you to know that it was because of you and the other people there that I resigned my job." So here, 10 years later, close to 3,000 miles away, he recognized this face that he wasn't even supposed to have seen 10 years ago, and wanted her to know that you folks did make a difference, and I resigned my job. So we never know when we may do something even very small, like holding a candle in the darkness, that it's like the ripples that go out when you throw a rock or a pebble in the lake. You never know where that's going to end up. I feel a little bit like Johnny Appleseed, planting seeds of active nonviolence, both in this country and around the world, and then nurturing those seeds. I never know where those seeds will land or where they'll take root, but it's very inspiring to see active nonviolent movements all around the world. At the end of my book, I talk about, I share resources for further study and action. Things that people can do, all the way from very simple things like studying more about nonviolent struggles around the world, finding a support group to act on an issue that is really of deep concern to you and your friends or neighbors, And I share 10 lessons learned from my life of activism. And I'd like to just outline those. One is it's important that we take time to envision the community, nation, and world that we want to live in, that we not be overwhelmed by the insanity of the world that is. That can be an inspiration for us to help build toward that kind of world. My own vision is a world without war, where there is justice for all, where we have love for one another, where there's peaceful resolution of conflicts, and we live in a way that's environmentally sustainable. Second is to realize the oneness of all life. We're all one human family. We need to understand that deep in our souls and act on that conviction. Third, we need to realize that nonviolence is a powerful force. As Gandhi said, nonviolence is the most powerful force in the world. It is an idea whose time has come. People all over the world are organizing nonviolent movements to bring about change. And as we've heard from Erica Chenoweth and Maria Stefan in Why Civil Resistance Works, nonviolent movements over the last 110 years have been twice as likely to be successful. So nonviolence is not something for sissies. It's certainly not something if you want to just wave your hands in the wind. This is something to bring about major change. Fourth, we need to nurture. We each need to nurture our own spirits through nature, music, friends, meditation, reading, and other practices of personal and spiritual development. I have learned the importance of nurturing our spirits and pacing ourselves for the long haul. So we need to each find what are those spiritual practices which can help us be in touch with our inner resources to keep at this for the long haul. Fifth, small committed groups can create change. Margaret Mead once said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world." Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. We can make a difference. We can help make history. Sixth, we need to realize it's going to take sustained struggle. A demonstration, a one-time demonstration is not going to do it. Even once a month or once every 6 months is not going to do it. In the civil rights movement, in the voting rights movement, in the anti-war movement, we've got to be sustained if we want to build a movement that is going to really bring about change. Seventh, we need to have good strategy. We need to create long-term goals that build toward our strategy for the future, and then build good strategy and sustain campaigns to achieve those goals. George Lakey has written a book called Toward a Living Revolution, which I think outlines how we can help develop good strategy. Eighth, we need to overcome our fear. Do everything you can to overcome your fear. Governments and other systems try to instill fear in us to control and immobilize us. But as people throughout history have found out, when we overcome our fear, that's when we realize the power that we have. And governments aren't especially happy about that, but that's our secret weapon. The more we overcome our fear, the more powerful and united we become. Ninth, the importance of truth. As Gandhi said, let your lives be experiments with truth. We must experiment with active nonviolence and keep hope alive. I share Gandhi's conviction that things undreamt of are daily being seen. The impossible is ever being possible. The impossible is ever becoming possible. We are constantly being astonished these days at the amazing discoveries in the field of violence. But this is Gandhi speaking. I maintain that far more undreamt of and seemingly impossible discoveries will be made in the field of nonviolence. And finally, we need to tell our stories. We can empower one another with our stories of involvement in active nonviolence. That's what I've tried to do with my book, Waging Peace. And that's what the video called A Force More Powerful, which has picked out 6 powerful nonviolent struggles around the world. The sit-ins in the South, the Gandhi's movement in India, the nonviolent resistance to Hitler, saving the Jews in Denmark, the Solidarity movement in Poland, the movement to end apartheid in South Africa, and the nonviolent overthrow of Pinochet in Chile. We need to be inspired by these stories and then figure out what can we do to help create the world that we want to live in. So these are some of my lessons learned, and I look forward to hearing and seeing some of your lessons learned and to hear some of your activities, which I firmly believe that together we shall overcome. That was a wonderful song that inspired us in the civil rights movement, but I think can continue to if we keep that vision, it can be very important in empowering us to actually achieving it. As Brian Wilson reminded us from his hospital bed after being run over by the munitions train, President Dwight Eisenhower once said, "I think that people want peace so much that one of these days governments had better get out of the way and let them have it." That's the challenge before us. How much do we want peace? How fervently are we willing to work for it?
Yes, we can. We can change things throughout the land, but we all must lend a hand. We can do it. Oh, yes, we can. We can do it. Yes, we can. We can change things throughout the land, but we all must lend a hand. We can do it. Oh, yes, we can. We can do it. Yes, we can. We can change